Your basement floods, you file a claim, and it's denied. Here's the trap. Your homeowner's policy probably never covered flood at all, and almost nobody finds out until it's too late. There are actually two totally different kinds of water damage, covered by two totally different kinds of insurance, and the line between them decides whether you get a check or a form letter. So here's the whole map. What your policy actually covers when water starts inside your house. Why flood is treated as an entirely separate animal that needs its own policy. The gray zones, gradual leaks, sewer backups, mold, that insurers use to deny claims. What you have to do in the first hours to protect your claim, and exactly how to fight back if the denial doesn't hold up. Let's start with the good news because there is some. If a supply line lets go at 2 in the morning, or your washing machine's hose blows and dumps 40 gallons onto the floor, that's exactly the kind of loss homeowners insurance was built for. It's sudden, it's accidental, and standard policies typically pay for both the water damage and drying out the structure. Notice the word doing all the work there. Sudden. Insurers aren't grading you on whether water got into your house. They're grading you on whether it happened as an event or crept in as a condition. Keep that distinction in your back pocket, because it's the exact fork in the road this whole episode is about. Here's the trap, spelled out plainly. To an insurance company, flood has a very specific legal meaning. It's water that rises and reaches your property from outside, off the ground from a river, a storm surge, or runoff with nowhere else to go. And a standard homeowner's policy doesn't just cover flood poorly, it excludes it completely on purpose by design. That's not an oversight or a stingy insurer. It's how the whole industry has worked since 1968, when Congress created a separate federal program because private insurers wouldn't touch flood risk at any price. So flood coverage doesn't live in your homeowner's policy at all. It lives in a completely different policy, through the National Flood Insurance Program or a private flood carrier, and you have to buy it separately on purpose before the water ever shows up. This is where a huge share of denials actually happen, and it has nothing to do with flood. Picture two homes with the exact same soggy drywall. In one, a pipe inside the wall blows clean open on a Tuesday, sudden, covered. In the other, that same pipe has been weeping a slow drip behind the wall for 8 months, and nobody noticed until the drywall finally gave out. And an adjuster who finds mineral staining, corrosion, or mold growth is going to call that gradual, which insurers treat as a maintenance problem you were supposed to catch, not an insurable accident. Same wet wall, opposite outcome, and the adjuster's read of the timeline is usually the whole ballgame. Now here's a third bucket that trips up people who think they've got this figured out. A storm hammers the neighborhood, the city's sewer main can't keep up, and it pushes backward right up through your basement drain. That water came from inside your own plumbing, so surely it's covered like a burst pipe, right? No, insurers carve sewer and drain backup out as its own separate peril, excluded from the base policy no matter how sudden it felt to you. You only get it back by buying a specific water backup endorsement, and even then the payout is often capped low, sometimes just $5,000 to $25,000, unless you ask your agent to raise that limit. Run your eye down this table, because it's basically the whole episode compressed into 4 rows, and there's a trap hiding in the third one. A storm rips shingles off your roof. Rain pours through that fresh hole and soaks your ceiling covered. That's wind and rain damage through a storm-created opening. But if that exact same storm also floods your street and water seeps in through your foundation, that's flood, excluded, same storm, same night. 2 completely different outcomes depending on how the water got to you. And look at the bottom row because it's the one nobody expects. Mold isn't automatically covered or automatically excluded. It rides on the underlying cause. Mold from a pipe that burst last week and got reported fast, generally covered. Mold from a leak you knew about and let sit for a year, that's on you. Let's turn this into steps, because in a real flood or leak, the first hour is where claims get won or lost. Step 1 sounds obvious, but people skip it constantly in the panic of a flooded basement. Photograph the damage and the source, the burst fitting, the backed up drain, the hole in the roof, with a timestamp, before you touch or remove anything, because that photo is your proof it was sudden. Step 2 isn't a suggestion. Nearly every policy carries a duty to mitigate, meaning you're expected to take reasonable steps, stop the water, pull up standing water, get air moving. And if you just let it sit and the damage spreads, the insurer can refuse to pay for the part that spreading caused. Step 3. File fast, because delay is free ammunition for an adjuster looking for a reason to call this gradual. And once a decision comes back, don't accept it's excluded over the phone. Step 4. Demand it in writing, because a written denial has to point to an actual policy provision, and that's the paper trail you'll need for Step 5. If you and the insurer agree it's covered but argue about the dollar amount, invoke the appraisal clause. If they're denying coverage entirely or slow-walking you, that's when a State Department of Insurance complaint goes on the record. Let's slow down on mitigation, because it's the one duty homeowners genuinely don't know they have until it costs them money. Nobody expects you to hire an emergency crew at 3 a.m. or rip out your own flooring. Reasonable is the standard, meaning stop the water source if you safely can, mop up what you can, get air moving. But here's the sting. If you go on vacation for a week with a wet carpet just sitting there and come home to mold climbing the walls, the insurer isn't obligated to pay for that. Their argument is that a reasonable person would have prevented it. And in the worst cases, ignoring this duty can cost you the whole claim, not just the extra damage. Even when a water claim is covered, there's a second fight waiting on the contents side: your furniture, electronics, the stuff the water ruined. Say your 5-year-old washing machine gets destroyed and a new one costs $800. Under actual cash value, the insurer subtracts depreciation for those 5 years of wear and cuts you a check for what a used one is worth, maybe half that. Replacement cost coverage skips the math and pays what it actually costs to replace it new. The catch is that most policies quietly default to the cheaper ACV option unless you specifically bought replacement cost coverage. So check your declarations page now, not after the flood, because that one line item is the difference between replacing everything and replacing half of it. If your claim was accepted but the check feels insultingly low, the insurer's contractor quote is half of what 3 local plumbers told you. This is your tool, and it's already sitting in your policy. It only kicks in when you both agree the loss is covered and just disagree on what it's worth, so don't reach for it if they're denying the claim outright. That's a different fight. You hire your own independent appraiser, the insurer hires theirs, and if those two can't agree, they jointly pick a neutral third appraiser called an umpire. The moment any 2 of those 3 land on the same number, that figure is binding on the insurance company. No more negotiating, no more lowball follow-up offers. Use this table as a gut check before you spend energy fighting. The pattern in the left column is always the same. The insurer skipped a step, mislabeled the cause without real proof, or you did everything right and they still said no. That's worth pushing on. The right column is the opposite: an actual flood with no flood policy behind it, or a leak that really had been dripping for months with the water stains to prove it. Pushing on those is usually just spending money to hear no twice. The honest move is comparing your actual timeline and evidence against both columns before you spend $1 on an appraiser or a lawyer. If the fight isn't really about a dollar figure, if the insurer never gave you a real reason, blew past their own response deadline, or you can't get a straight answer from anyone, that's when you go around them, not through them. Every state runs a Department of Insurance complaint line. It's free, and it puts a regulator on record asking your insurer to explain themselves, which companies take a lot more seriously than another angry phone call from you. But know the ceiling of what a DOI complaint can do. It can push. It generally can't force a specific payout. So if the number is large, If the denial smells like it's ignoring its own evidence, or an insurer's attorney is already involved, that's the moment to stop doing this yourself and bring in a public adjuster or a homeowner's insurance attorney in your state. So here's the whole trap boiled down. Your policy was built to catch the sudden internal stuff, the burst pipe, the failed hose, and it was built to exclude flood, gradual leaks, and neglect just as deliberately. Flood isn't a gap in your coverage. It's a whole separate policy you have to go get on purpose. And the same goes for sewer backup. Don't assume burst pipe coverage stretches to cover it. Buy the endorsement. And when water actually does hit, your 4 jobs are simple even when the moment isn't. Document the source before you touch anything. Mitigate fast because that duty is real. File without delay. And if they say no, make them put the actual reason on paper. Do that, and you've turned yourself from an easy denial into a homeowner with a real paper trail. Subscribe. Homeowner Rights Explained breaks down one homeowner right every video. This video is general education, not legal or insurance advice, and the coverage rules for water damage, flood, sewer backup, and how claims are valued and disputed vary by your state, your insurer, and the specific wording of your own policy. It was researched and produced with AI assistance, including script research, voice, and on-screen graphics, and reviewed by a human against the cited sources before publishing. Before you act, read your own policy's declarations and exclusions. Check whether you carry NFIP or private flood coverage. And if a claim is large or the denial looks wrong, talk to a licensed insurance professional or attorney in your state.